You know what it's like to care for a child every single day for 4 years without getting paid a single dime? No salary, no days off, no thanks? I do. Because I did it. All in the name of family, according to my sister. But the day I said, I can't do this anymore, that's the day I became the villain in her story. Ungrateful, she yelled. You're only good for this. I took a deep breath and left the house in silence. Hi, my name is Rachel. Grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and come with me. You're going to want to hear this story. I was 18 and still believed that helping your family was an act of love. I just finished high school and didn't have a clear path yet. While my friends were celebrating college acceptances and scholarships in other cities, I was still unsure about what I wanted to do. That's when my older sister, Julia, came to me with a request. She just had a baby, and her husband was unemployed. She said they couldn't afford a nanny. It's just for a little while, she said. Just until I get my life together. And me, naive, hopeful, believed her. Julia was one of those people who always seemed to have a plan. She was focused, driven, and I admired that about her. She said she didn't want to lose the year, that she needed to finish her postgrad program, get a job, get back on track. And me, I was still living with our parents, no bills to pay, and according to her, plenty of time on my hands. So I agreed. At first, I watched the baby in the afternoons. Then it became all day. Julia would drop her off in the morning and come back at night. Her husband would go out looking for work, and I stayed, diapers, bottles, and crying fits included. At first, everyone said I was amazing. My mom said I had a gift with kids. My dad said I was the sensitive one in the family. And honestly, that made me feel good. I felt needed, useful. I love my niece. Watching her grow, take her first steps, say her first words, it all moved me. I posted photos of us, with captions like, best part of my day. But deep down, a discomfort started to grow. My friends talked about internships, college, travel. And me, I was home, always home. One day, I brought up the idea of taking the college entrance exam in the second semester. My mom looked surprised. But sweetie, what about the baby? Julia's still trying to get back on her feet. It was as if my future depended on my sister's instability. Julia never said anything directly, of course. She just acted like I'd always be there. I started turning things down, an English course, a free workshop, an interview for a junior position. Everything felt out of reach because there was no one else to stay with the baby. Even when Julia got a part-time job, nothing changed. She left early, came home late, and sometimes went out with friends or to classes after work. I was the one doing it all. Meals, baths, naps, fevers, colic. This wasn't helping. This was full-time childcare. Except without pay, without appreciation. And when I asked how long it would last, the answer was always vague. You're doing this out of love, right? Just for a little while. And that little while never seemed to end. I remember one night especially. I was exhausted. The baby had cried for hours, and I didn't even get to eat dinner. Julia walked in, hair done, carrying shopping bags, and casually said, "Thanks for staying with her. Dinner with my coworkers was great." "No, thank you." "No, how are you?" I went to bed crying that night. But the next morning, I was there again, bottle in hand. Because that's what was expected of me. And I still believed that maybe, someday, things would go back to normal. Over time, even my identity started to fade into hers. In the neighborhood, people called me the mom of that cute little girl. I'd explain I was just the aunt, but I didn't even know if that mattered anymore. I looked in the mirror and couldn't recognize the girl who once dreamed of studying psychology. Now I was just the caregiver, and the longer I stayed in that role, the harder it was to step out of it. If I complained, I was ungrateful. If I wanted more, I was selfish. Like wanting a life of my own was somehow wrong. But no one ever asked what I wanted. Julia kept saying I was essential, but never asked if I was happy. My parents said it was beautiful to see sisters supporting each other, but they didn't see how much it drained me. Only someone who's felt that quiet, soul-deep exhaustion understands what it's like to smile at a child while your heart is begging for freedom. And still, I stayed, because I still believed in that promise, just for a little while. And maybe deep down, I didn't know how to say I was tired of waiting. 3 years had passed since the day my sister said, "It's just for a little while." Now I was 21, and I was still exactly where I started, taking care of the same child, in the same house, holding on to the same empty promises. Only now, Julia worked full-time, was taking night classes, and kept saying she needed self-care weekends. That included vacations with her husband, dinners with coworkers, and spa days. And me, I was still in the back room, surrounded by toys, diapers, and silence. The strangest part was how normal it had all become. No one talked about it anymore. My parents got used to seeing me with the baby in my arms. The little girl called for me when she cried, when she was sick, when she wanted comfort. Julia barely changed a diaper. Sometimes I'd step out of the shower and find the baby waiting by the bathroom door, holding out a clean diaper. And I'd ask myself, who's the real mother here? I'd gotten so deep into it, even my pain had gone quiet. Because being invisible hurts. But screaming and not being heard hurts even more. And it wasn't like I didn't try. I went to job interviews. I got accepted into a photography course I had dreamed of. I even passed a selection process for a volunteer internship at a nonprofit that worked with children. But every time, the response at home was the same. And who's going to take care of the baby? It was like I'd been chained to a mission I never signed up for. A role forced on me, no script, no pay, and worst of all, no end date. Then came one Saturday night that changed everything. Julia asked me to watch her daughter because she had a work commitment. I believed her. I stayed with the girl from 5 in the afternoon until nearly midnight. She fell asleep in my arms while I fought off a pounding headache. When Julia got home, she was glowing, makeup done, holding a dessert bag. I went to the bathroom, opened Instagram on impulse, and there it was. A photo of her in a fancy restaurant, wine glass in hand. Caption: "Perfect night with my love." My blood boiled. When she walked down the hallway, I called out, "You lied to me." She played dumb. I showed her the picture, told her I was tired, that this wasn't fair. And she looked me in the eye and said, completely flat, "Rachel, you don't even pay rent here. You live for free, eat for free. What exactly are you complaining about?" I stood frozen, as if her words had sliced straight through my skin and hit something deeper, my worth. The next day, I tried talking to my parents. I told them everything. How exhausted I was, the course I'd lost, the sadness that was swallowing me whole. My dad sighed and said, "Sweetheart, your sister needs support. You've always been the sensitive one." And my mom added, "You're so good with kids. Why not turn that into a profession?" It was like no one wanted to see that I was slowly falling apart. Like the love I gave was just expected. Limitless. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I knew because I started holding grudges. And that wasn't me. I started collecting memories of being dismissed, of the times I was made small, of the nights I cried myself to sleep. And I realized my life was passing me by. And I had no story to tell, just hers. It was like I'd vanished from myself, turned into a spare part, useful only when needed. That's when the need to leave started to grow. At first, it was just a distant thought. A what if? But it slowly became a necessity. I wanted to live on my own, to work, to study, to travel, to breathe. I just didn't know where to begin, or if I'd have the courage. But one thing I did know. If I stayed there any longer, I'd lose myself completely. Because no kind of love is worth the cost of your soul. And somewhere in me, I still believed I could find myself again. I just needed to take the first step. The email came on a random Tuesday. I was giving my niece her afternoon snack when I saw the notification pop up on my phone. It was an offer for an internship at a small accounting office. Nothing fancy, nothing big. But for me, it was a chance, a door, my first real opportunity to stop being the invisible babysitter. The pay was symbolic, sure, but that wasn't what made me smile. It was the hours, 9 to 5. For the first time, someone saw me as more than just help. They saw me as a professional. I spent the rest of the afternoon thinking about how I'd break the news to my family. I wanted to do it right, calmly, maturely. I waited until dinner. My parents were at the table, Julia too. I took a deep breath and said, "I got an internship. I start next week. I'll be working all day, so I won't be able to take care of the baby anymore." Her reaction was immediate, but not the way I'd hoped. Julia dropped her fork like I'd just said something outrageous. She stared at me with fury, like I'd broken some secret pact between us. Ungrateful! That was the first word out of her mouth. Then came the rest, sharp, like stones. Do you know how much I've trusted you? How hard I've worked to keep everything going? And now, when I really need you, you turn your back on me. I tried to explain, to say how important this was to me, that I was happy, that it meant something, but she didn't want to hear it. And when my parents tried to step in and calm things down, Julia raised her voice even more. She's abandoning the family. That's what she's doing. The silence that followed was heavy. My dad lowered his eyes, like he didn't want to get involved. My mom sighed but said nothing. I felt exposed. Small. The girl who'd always been called so generous was now labeled selfish, ungrateful, disloyal. Julia stormed off and slammed her bedroom door. The baby cried. I got up, picked her up, rocked her in my arms. And in that moment, I asked myself, did I really do something so wrong just for choosing myself? In the days that followed, tension settled into the walls like a bad smell. Julia barely spoke to me. When she did, her words were cold. My parents tried to keep the peace, but you could feel it. No one was comfortable. On Friday, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. She left me hanging. I didn't expect this from her. I thought I could trust her, but she chose to chase her little dreams. She betrayed us. That word, betrayed, hit me like a punch to the gut. Me, a traitor. Julia announced she was hiring a nanny. Said it at the breakfast table like she was punishing someone. Well, now I have to pay someone. Because some people around here would rather chase crumbs from a tiny internship than help their own family. I swallowed the tears. I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to justify my right to grow. I just wanted to begin. Or maybe start over completely. I began packing my things. Sorted through papers, folded clothes, mapped out my schedule. With every step I took toward that internship, I felt my heart begin to rebuild itself. And at the same time, the pressure inside the house grew. Julia nitpicked everything. My showers, my silence, my schedule, even my smile. It was like I'd broken some secret system she had built to benefit from me. And now that I was no longer under her control, she hated it. I started sleeping with earbuds, and just to drown out the comments. I began leaving the house earlier, just to get some air. The baby felt my distance, and that broke me a little. But I couldn't keep living for someone else. My soul was begging for change. And on that first day of work, as I closed the front door behind me, wearing the simplest outfit I owned, I felt something new. Fear mixed with freedom. For the first time, I was choosing me. And even with the world falling apart at home, that gave me strength to keep going. The first month of my internship was a mix of exhaustion and euphoria. I woke up early, got ready in silence, and left the house before Julia or my parents were even up. The office was small but full of energy. I was learning something new every day. For the first time, people called me by my name, not by my connection to someone else. Great work, Rachel. Can you review this for me? Simple words, but to someone who'd been known only as the baby's aunt for years. They felt huge. Meanwhile, Julia enrolled her daughter in daycare. At first, she pretended not to care that I was gone. But that didn't last. Soon came the quick favors, and just this once requests. Rachel, I've got a dinner Saturday. Can you watch her for a couple hours? Sunday's a birthday party for one of Marcos's coworkers. We can't bring the kid. I politely said no. Told her I needed to rest, to study, to take care of myself. But she took every no as a personal attack, and the mask slipped fast. One Sunday morning, after I declined yet another last-minute request, Julia snapped. You've changed. You're not the same. You're selfish, overdramatic, cold, thinking you're better than everyone just because you got a little internship. I stayed quiet, trying to stay composed. But inside I was shaking. It still hurt, hearing my sister tear me apart, especially when all I was trying to do was put myself back together. Then one day she crossed the line. I was eating lunch alone in the kitchen when she stormed in. Said she was tired of trying to talk to me. Said it was exhausting living with someone who thinks they're better than everyone else. And then, with pure disdain in her voice, she said, You're only good for one thing, Rachel, taking care of other people's kids. Because no one's ever really going to want you. It only took a few seconds. But those words, they branded themselves into my chest like a hot iron. I tried not to cry. I went to my room, locked the door, and collapsed. Curled up on the floor like a child being scolded. Suddenly, every little victory, every step forward, felt small, meaningless. And for the first time since I'd started that internship, I thought about quitting, going back to square one, becoming what they expected. Because deep down, it still hurt to want freedom and be called selfish for it. The next day, I showed up to work with puffy eyes. My boss, a sharp but kind woman, noticed right away. "Everything okay, Rachel?" I hesitated, but when she said, "You don't have to act strong all the time," I broke. I told her everything, or almost everything. Not for drama, but because I needed someone, just once, to tell me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't ungrateful, that I was human. She listened in silence. Then she said, "Rachel, you have value. And not because you take care of people, but because of who you are." That broke me open in a different way. I felt seen, respected, understood. She asked where I lived, and when I explained, she offered help. Said if things at home got worse, she had a spare room. I didn't have to accept it right away, but I needed to know. There was a way out. That day, I walked home with my head held a little higher. Still hurt, still tired, but something had been planted. Maybe I didn't have to keep surviving everything alone. Maybe there was a world outside that house, beyond the roles I never chose. And for the first time, I seriously considered leaving. Not out of anger, but out of survival. Because self-love is love too. And slowly, I was learning how to feel that for myself. There was no speech, no confrontation, just a small suitcase, neatly folded clothes, and a note left on the kitchen table. "I'm leaving. I need to take care of myself now." When my boss reminded me that her offer for housing was real, I took a deep breath and said yes. Not out of impulse, out of closure. My parents saw the suitcase and asked if I was sure. I said I was. They didn't fight it. Maybe because, deep down, they knew I had emotionally left that house long ago. That first week was rough. Everything felt unfamiliar, unsteady. I felt like a guest in my own life, testing every step like I was walking on ice. But there were no screams, no demands, no guilt trips, just silence and freedom. I kept going to the internship, and outside of work hours, my boss taught me more than spreadsheets. She showed me how to build something from scratch, how to think beyond just surviving, how to believe I could create something of my own. I started helping out with her company's parties, planning details, coming up with themes, putting together custom kits. And somewhere in that process, I rediscovered a passion I didn't know I had. Creating moments of joy, kids, colors, party favors, smiles. It was ironic. After years of caring for someone else's child out of obligation, I was now choosing to work with children. But this time, I was being paid. I was being valued. I was being respected. I started saving money, little by little, dollar by dollar. I began selling my ideas, and people bought them. At first, it was just my boss's friends. Then word spread. Clients started recommending me. Before I knew it, I had my own event calendar. I came up with a simple name, Magic and Joy Events. Rented a tiny room to store materials. Worked from home, assembled kits by hand. Stayed up late. Worked Sundays. But for the first time, I didn't feel tired with resentment. It was work with purpose. It was my life finally taking shape. Some relatives had things to say. That I was getting too full of myself. That I was wrong for cutting ties with my sister. An uncle even said, "Family is forever, even when it hurts." I just smiled and replied, "I'd rather keep my distance than be used." Because forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means putting the weight down and moving forward. And that's exactly where I was heading. Forward, towards something I never had, self-respect. Years went by. My name started getting around town. Schools called me. Moms referred me. I trained other young women. Built a small team. Every party I delivered was a quiet answer to the past. Yes, I am capable. My apartment was simple, but my heart, lighter, whole. And in the middle of that new chapter, something unexpected happened. I got an email. Subject: my daughter's 5th birthday. In the message, the name of the child's father, my sister's ex-husband. He explained that their daughter really wanted Aunt Rachel to plan her party, that she remembered the bedtime stories I used to tell her, the little cakes I made, the way I used to hold her before she fell asleep. I read that message with a tight chest, but no bitterness. Just a quiet knot from something that once was, but no longer is. I took a deep breath and responded like a professional. We discussed pricing, the theme, the schedule. We set a meeting. He said the little girl would be happy to see me. I simply replied, I'll do my best. Because in that moment, it wasn't the invisible babysitter speaking. It was the woman who, despite everything, chose not to harden her heart. Who came back, not out of duty, but by choice. And that changed everything. The party was scheduled for a Saturday morning in a spacious, sunlit venue. My team and I arrived early, with boxes of decorations, colorful fabrics, custom balloons, and a dessert table worthy of a magazine. Every detail had been prepared with care, not out of vanity, but out of respect for the little girl who once called me Mom, without even knowing I wasn't. I wanted her to feel loved, even if behind the scenes was someone who once had to walk away just to survive. Julia's ex-husband was kind, reserved. We didn't talk much. He just thanked me for accepting his daughter's request. He said she'd been missing me, that she remembered the carrot cake I used to make, the bedtime stories, the drawings on the living room rug. It was strange to hear all that. Beautiful, but strange. Because deep down, a part of me had assumed I'd been forgotten. But kids feel things, and they remember. Just before the guests started arriving, I did one last check. Table set, music playing, party favors in place. Everything was perfect. Not extravagant, but full of love. I was fixing a bow on a backdrop when I heard the door open. Julia walked in. Late, of course. Like always. Wearing a light-colored dress, high heels, flawless makeup. She stopped for a second when she saw me. Her face flickered between surprise and discomfort. But she quickly put on that polished smile, the one she always wore when she wanted to seem in control. Hi, Rachel, what a surprise to see you here. I gave a small smile and replied, Your daughter requested it. I'm just here to do my job. She nodded, looked around, complimented the setup like we were old friends. I kept it professional, tried to avoid the weight of the past. She chatted about cakes and decorations like nothing had ever happened, as if she hadn't erased me from her life with cruel words, as if I hadn't been written out of the story, only to be reinvited now under her terms. But fate doesn't follow scripts. The birthday girl came running in with her hair up and a princess dress twirling around her. When she saw me, her face lit up. She shouted across the room, Aunt Rachel! She ran straight to me and threw her arms around my waist, squeezing tightly like no time had passed. Then she looked up and said, loud and proud, in that innocent way only children can, You're my favorite aunt, the one who always stayed with me. In that moment, Julia said nothing. And for just a second, she looked small. Not because of me, but because of everything she failed to see, to care for, to value. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The little girl's hug said it all. I stayed a few more minutes, helped with the photos, made sure everything was running smoothly. But when it was time to sing Happy Birthday, I left, grabbed my bag, thanked my team, left a note with the final instructions. And I walked out in silence. No scene. Because the real ending to that story wasn't at the dessert table or in the group photos. It was in me. In the way I left, at peace, whole, free. Now I know. Sometimes you have to leave just to be remembered as the one who truly stayed. If you like this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and if you want to help me keep telling these stories, you can buy me a coffee. The link is there in the first pinned comment. Every cup helps me keep bringing you more stories.